Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. Sean's on the switcher, we've got Sid in the studio, and this is Watches Tonight. This evening, we are chatting live. The success of last week's format means it's coming back this week, and we are making our 2023 Omega Watch novelty predictions. Speedmasters, Seamasters, and more, all of that tonight on Watches Tonight. Want to spare a thought for Gary Rossington, the last original member of Lynyrd Skynyrd, who just recently died in the last 24 hours. His music was poetic and moving, and it stood the test of time. If you haven't heard Lynyrd Skynyrd's extended catalog, you really should. It's more than just the top 40 hits, and his guitar really is the animating spirit of the whole band. I'm not sure I believe in an afterlife, but I hope that somewhere beyond these mortal coils, the Skynyrd reunion is complete. Welcome to our friends in the box: Edward Ledden, Arto Charles, Joe Pinto from Louisville, Enrique Cassiano joining in from Brazil, Kevin H. from Lakeland, Florida, Jack Nunez, Richard Combs from South Florida, 24 Degrees joining in from the UK, staying up late with us, Mark S. from Brooklyn, Matt Foster, Thomas Burnett, Robert Dixon from Scotland, Keystar G60, and CLF, who's joining us from the Netherlands. Good to see you guys. All right, visit thewatchbox.com. It is my favorite hardware store, and hopefully yours as well, where you can see our daily updated, even hourly updated luxury watch inventory. They are the people who pay for these pixels, and I am rather fond of them. So do the Watchbox a favor, open up a new window, keep me streaming, and check it on. All right, what else is going on? Instagram is what's going on. I've got a lot going on there. Short form videos, updates in the life of Tim Mosso. We've got my new in-depth guide to the Rolex Milgauss posted. Lots of fun stuff, updated constantly. A thread of my favorite watches from the Watchbox inventory, including ones that are not posted on our website. That's Tim_Mosso on Instagram. Design Atelier, greetings from Aruba. We've got John Farrell, we've got Miroslav joining in, Lloyd Kerr from Maryland, we've got Leo Dare from Cheltenham in the UK, and we've got Watches with Dennis from Kansas and Simon Holt from Chile, Hollywood, Northern Ireland. All right, guys, so I asked, you answered. Wrist shots, the heart and soul of the show, starting with Francis C., who opens our account with a triple shot of Audemars Piguet heavyweights. I love that Remaster 01. We've got Ryan C., who pairs his A Longo und Zona Zeitwerk date with a 1951 Porsche 356 at the Sydney Harbour Concours d'Elegance. Scott I. takes the wheel of his Audi A5 with the Govberg edition titanium H. Moser & C. Pioneer rotating bezel. Marcus G., one of my favorite boys from the Talking Time with Tim Mosso Facebook group, celebrates independent watchmaking with the Chopek Antarctique and a color-matching pug, as a matter of fact. Scott B. watches the 2023 Formula One season opener with his Rolex Explorer 2. I was not satisfied with the outcome, but I was very happy with Fernando Alonso's third place. All right, send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at thewatchbox.com to see your watches in this box. Who else is in this box? Well, we've got Muds 112 from Slough in the UK. We've got Ron H. We've got Tango from Louisiana. We've got Eric Nielsen from Asheville, North Carolina, and Justin D. joining in. We've also got Robert Wood from Austin, Texas, and Dave Opencar. Welcome to all of you. Welcome JJ, welcome Mateo, and Raiseway from Toronto. Okay, so crazy and shocking Omegas we never saw coming. Sometimes past is prologue. While history does not repeat itself, there are distinct patterns. One of them has been Omega's willingness to do things that other mainstream luxury brands like Rolex and Breitling simply don't. And it often involves really expensive low-volume watches that otherwise would hail from the likes of the Vacherons and the Langes and the Pateks of the world, if not independent brands. Starting in 1994 with the Omega Central Tourbillon, an absolute mind-bending offering from a brand that only a few years prior looked like it was going to go under and had been focusing almost entirely on quartz watches. Automatic winding, flying tourbillon, centrally located, designed by the great Maurice Grimm on loan from Audemars Piguet. This instantly recapitulated Omega's commitment to the next 100 years of the brand, and it remains a standout today. 4 years later, in 1998, Omega marks 50 years of its Seamaster dive watch with a limited edition white gold skeleton engraved version of the James Bond Diver 300 meter. This thing is fully engraved, and when you get close, you realize not only have the bridges and plates been skeletonized, They have also been individually freehand engraved. They made 50 pieces. It was a fully functional automatic winding diver. It did everything the standard diver 300 meter did. It was just created on an artisanal, handcrafted basis. Again, the kind of thing that perhaps Rolex might do on an acid trip. Really, I think it's more like the kind of thing that Atelier de Genève would do. But this is Omega at its best. This is Omega saying, look, there are some things other brands in our price point won't do as a matter of orthodoxy, but even if it makes no meaningful change to our bottom line, we're going to do something cool as a tribute to the collectors and as a nod to our individuality as a brand and willingness to go beyond the pale and the norm. Then we have in 2010 a watch that very few people could wear. Again, willingness to do something beautiful in a quantity that made no economic impact on the firm's bottom line. This is the Aquaterra XXL Small Second. 88 pieces in white gold, like you see here, 88 pieces in rose gold, beautifully traditional, like a mid-century modern watch, and a solid enamel dial, actually cut from several different discs of enamel and built up in layers. It had an extraordinarily large, properly sized chronometer movement based on the 6498 Unitas, and it was also 49.2 millimeters in diameter and still 150 meters water resistant. So at the same time, it was antiquarian and very modern and very, very bold, as there was no attempt to sell this watch to anyone except Arnold, Stallone, and Shaq. Let's look forward to 2014. Again, low volume, but super cool. 8 pieces only. This was the debut of orange ceramic in the Omega catalog. Now, initially, Omega used rubber inserts when it wanted orange tones on its bezels. This was the beginning of orange ceramic, a seriously difficult material to produce, and it was produced in-house at the Swatch Group. They only built 8 of these because the whole thing was made of platinum. Dial, case, clasp, even the threads in the strap itself were laced with platinum. And you see, the only thing here that's really not platinum is the orange ceramic and the white gold used for the hands and the indices. A very special watch, and as you can see, a Planet Ocean GMT, 8 pieces, $75,000 a piece. Omega punching above its weight as a brand. Let's look at 2018 and the first wrist chronograph. Not a whole lot of major brands pull new old stock out of the attic, finish them to haute horlogerie, and then sell them with a big price. That's exactly what Omega did. They had a 18 CHRO movement that was 95 years old, properly sized for a pocket watch. They put it in a wristwatch. This was a tribute to their first wrist chronograph. It has a multi-step enamel dial like the other watch you saw, assembled from different discs. The case is white gold with rose gold garnishing and a hunter case back. The movement, caliber 3018 as they dubbed it, was entirely updated and hand finished in the atelier that also does the tourbillon, and the whole thing came with an extraordinary themed boxed set. Very expensive at $121,000, but there was no doubt, based on the quality and the exclusivity, that it was very much worth what they were asking for it. It continues in 2019 with the Aquaterra Ultralight. Now, this isn't an artisanal watch. What it is a Richard Mille for Omega prices. Well, maybe not quite. This cost $48,600, but let's count the virtues. Shock resistant to the point you could use it to play golf. Water resistant to over 100 meters. Anti-magnetic to over 15,000 Gauss. It had a spring-loaded telescoping and retractable crown, a 3-day power reserve, solid titanium movement, titanium case, titanium dial. Oh, and by the way, you could have it in any one of 3 color themes, green, blue, and red. This truly was a $50,000 version of a watch Richard Mille would sell for $500,000. It came out of the blue and it was built in very low numbers. I've only seen 1 in consumer hands. This is the kind of thing Rolex wouldn't bother with, to be honest. But Omega does, and that's what makes Omega special. Let's jump into the box right here. We've got Hans N saying, "Hello Tim, #1 fan. You know I appreciate that." We also have Nick O joining in from Shanghai, getting up early with us. We've got Jean-Claude Beaver, Tobister McDonkey. The Hublot Golf watch actually keeps score and totalizes your strokes and holes. It's my grail. Well, that's good. Everyone needs a distinctive grail. That's a watch you'll never forget. Charlotte Jett joining in from Norfolk, UK. Justin D saying Aquaterra Ultralight is my favorite Omega. Tried it on and fell in love. And Keystar G60. Tim, do you have a favorite watchmaking tool or gadget? First, let me note that Aquaterra Ultralight weighs 55 grams. That's less than 2 ounces. It is seriously ultralight. Okay, watchmaking tools. I'm a big fan of the Horia tool, which is used for setting jewels in bridges and plates, and it makes really incremental adjustments. I'm also a huge fan of the triangular cross-section ruby rod that's used for slotting screws. I really like using that thing. And I would also say lapping paper, because with lapping paper you can make boogered up and scratched screw heads look shiny and new again. And with a little bit of practice and skill, you can also black polish them using lapping paper. So those are probably my favorites. Otherwise, I've always liked cleaning machines. There's a beauty to cleaning machines and the way they work. What else is going on? Stephen E. from Oak Park, Michigan joining in, and Loic Fernandez from France staying up late with me in continental Europe. What else is going on? Ryan M. from the UK, Neff, and Tim G. in the box. Antelope saying IWC put out an insane 30 grand watch. There are many insane watches out there these days, but we're focusing on Omega for now. Continuing with the sensational watches they've launched, there was the 2022 Speedmaster Chrono Chime. If you had $500,000 Chiming solid gold aventurine dial Speedmaster Chrono on your Omega bingo card for 2022, give yourself a pat on the back. No one saw this coming. 6 years of development, 17 patents, a retail price bonkers at $486,000, and somehow this feels worth it. This thing is big, 45.5 millimeters. It weighs over 11 ounces, almost 12. It's 326 grams. It's an absolute wristful. Aventurine dial, solid gold, caliber 1932 for the first year Omega timed the Olympics. It has an El Primero-like 5 hertz or 10 beat per second rate. It's also a split-second chronograph. It has an amplifier box, so when you get it, you get this spectacular amplifier boxed set that comes with tons of cool accessories, but above all, it amplifies the chime of the watch. And what does the watch do? Well, this rose gold movement and aventurine dial cap a watch that is able to chime the stopped time of the chronograph. So when you stop the chronograph, the chiming system chimes the minutes and the seconds. It doesn't have chrono hours, something had to give, but I don't think you'll mind too much. It also includes real rose-lathe guilloche. That is not the stamped kind. Everything about this watch exhausts superlative. It even has loom to make it everyday friendly. And like an FP Journe, the movement is made of solid gold. It's not just gold colored. Plus, that same year, and somewhat lost in the noise after this monster, was the 2022 1932 Chrono Chime, which used a very similar version of the movement, the 1932. 45mm pocket watch for the wrist. This one is openly a vintage style, and it includes a lot of the same features, a slightly lower price point, $453,600, but the point is that the ambition at Omega is limitless. Here we have an enamel dial, and the metallic subdials are made of rose lathe cut sterling silver for the seconds and the minutes. Very, very impressive stuff. All of this is best in the world in execution and conception, which means Omega really does deserve comparison to the likes of Grubel Forsey, Erwerk, Romain Gaultier, and other elites in that space. Before we jump to where Omega might be going this year, let's take a look. A quick casting call. Guys, I am bringing in collectors for my Collector Conversation series. You can quite literally have not just your wrist shots, but the entirety of you, your wrist, and your watches on my screen. Now, we're focusing on people in the Northeast for now, but I'll also be traveling to LA, Miami, and New York on a fairly regular basis. So, reach out to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com. If you're anywhere from Washington, D.C. up to Boston, we'll find a way to put something together. I want to bring out the best in our collector community by allowing you to speak on your own behalf and not just monopolizing the discussion. I want to shut up and listen, and I want you guys to make it possible. So Monday Mailbag at thewatchbox.com to be part of our collector conversation series, and we're currently scheduling for April. All right, jumping back, viewer wrist shots number 2, Mike M. and his Panerai Rodimir PAM 183, a purist's Panerai. He hits the road in his Toyota Tacoma. We don't get many truck shots on the channel. Joseph P. joins our convoy with his Tudor Tiger Prince Date and Porsche. I love the color of that cuff right there. That is Tim Mosso green. We've got Wakar A, who hits the beach with his Breitling Super Ocean Kelly Slater and the kids. Muhammad E of Nairobi, Kenya, celebrates his daughter's birthday with not one but 2 pandas in one shot. Troy B and his GMT are at Disney, and if you look in the background, they're in Star Wars world with a full-sized Rebel X-Wing fighter. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at thewatchbox.com to see your pieces on these pixels. All right, Omega 2023 predictions and wait lists and wish lists. What will they be? Well, and when? That's the other thing. In the post-Baselworld era, Omega watch launches are less predictable. We could see drops before Watches and Wonders, during Watches and Wonders to steal Rolex's thunder. We could see watches right up until the end of the year. Remember, we were well into the fall before the Speedmaster Chrono Chime arrived, so Omega no longer plays by the rules. That's why I'm holding this prediction episode fairly early to get ahead of the actual launches. And here's the other thing. When we talk about what might be with Rolex watches for 2021, 22, 23, I always try to think of what could happen if Rolex did something spectacular. What if Rolex gave us a reissue of the Jean-Claude Killy Dato Compacts with a split-second chronograph and a perpetual calendar? And it's fun to say what if, but with Rolex you almost always know that reality will be something more along the lines of a Milgauss that looks the same and has a new movement. Whereas with Omega, when we talk about the weird and wonderful and the exciting possibilities at the limit of imagination, there's a realization that it's happened and can happen again, which is why I find Omega watch predictions are the most exciting of the year. Patek Philippe's not going to democratize the dive watch with a cheaper Seamaster, and at the same time, Breitling's not going to build a $500,000 grand complication. Omega could do either one or both. So let's jump into the chat box and see what you guys are saying, and then I'll wrap out my guesses for what might be this year. Chris Bailey saying, thank you, Tim. I'm still trying to find the perfect steel sports watch. I'm in the fashion industry. I drive a Porsche Cayman. Would love a watch that looks fabulous for about $10,000. Well, I would say for $10,000, you've got a lot of options, and I mean a lot of options. Consider that many Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Series dress watches are available. You can go out and get yourself a steel Master Memovox. I recommend the steel black dial. That would be my pick for $10,000 or less. I think that's also a great watch to have because I find the alarm is by far the most practical, and with Jaeger-LeCoultre, it's a real high horology watch. Similarly, you can go out and get yourself an Amvox 2 triggerless chronograph, a really cool watch, yes, Aston Martin themed, but it's subtle. You could absolutely rock it with your Porsche. That would be a great one to hunt down because it's probably the most innovative and attractive chronograph of the 2000s. I owned mine for 4 years. I loved it. It was one of my major wrist time watches that I have trouble taking off. I would also say, because you're a Porsche guy, see if you can find the limited edition Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch gray side of the moon. It'll cost you more than 10 grand because this was the Porsche Club of America version, but it's definitely worth seeking it out and paying a premium. Separately, you should have absolutely no trouble finding a number of Glasuta Original steel automatic dress style watches for under 10 grand. I'm a big fan of the vintage 60s models with the gradient dials, so definitely check those out and consider that you've got a ton of options under 10 grand from Nomos, and Nomos being German, it's a good match for your Porsche. I would say go out and try to find one of the 39mm stainless steel cold enamel dial Lambdas, because that has a truly handmade and hand finished Nomos movement that feels sufficiently luxury to pair up with a Porsche Cayman. I'm going to say Lambda Steel 39mm. That's my final answer right there. Okay, we got Huxley, Orwell, and Rand all of his favorites in one place. Joining me from New Jersey, we've got Leo Dare saying updated Planet Ocean this year, maybe. What else is going on here? Jay Reynolds saying made it to the live stream. Love the bell staff. Tim picked up a bell staff. Cheatham myself. Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of this thing. It's not just my favorite color. Everything is beautifully made. They use the best possible zipper. The quality of the fabric feels like it'll last a lifetime. I'm not big on clothes, but having a few really nice things is a great pleasure. And then what else is going on here? We got Rick on watches, and we've got João V from Portugal staying up late with us. Okay. So Victor de Boisseau joining us from Paris, where it's 11 p.m. Thank you so much. Keeping it real. Okay, so what is Omega going to launch this year? Let's be clear. We could get Omega's first perpetual calendar since the 1990s, or a 15,000 meter diver to kick Rolex in the teeth. But what I think we're going to see is a redesigned Planet Ocean, because it's been a while. The Planet Ocean collection was last refreshed in 2016, and there's a lot of room for improvement. It's not just that the time has passed and a redesign is due. First, we need to improve fit, because these are some of the thickest and most awkward Omega watches. The cases range from big to huge, and when you're talking 16, 17, 18, even 19 millimeters, it's too much for most people. Something's got to give, and Omega's one weakness as a brand, well, they've got two weaknesses. Too many watches and not enough control over pricing, and second, the watches are just too darn thick. And I would say some of the bigger Speedmasters with chronographs and complications and the Planet Oceans are the worst offenders. I would also say that Power Reserve needs to step up. This 8500 series coaxial family has been with us since 2007. Back then, 60 hours of Power Reserve was quite respectable. Today, it's lagging behind the 70 hours that has become the industry standard at brands as disparate as Breitling and Rolex and Jaeger-LeCoultre and IWC. 70 hours, or just about 3 days, is the new industry standard, and for the money Omega charges for these new, it can afford to give us a true 3 days. It can even afford to go a little bit beyond with the resources of Swatch Group and ETA, which after all designs the Omega exclusive movements. We should be looking at 80 to 90 hours. This is something that it could do, and should do, in addition to making the watches a lot thinner than they are right now. I think that we're also likely to see variations on the time-tested Seamaster Diver 300 meter. It's not so much that it's time, because it was last redesigned in 2018, so I don't see a wholesale redesign, but this is the 30th anniversary of the collection. It's been 30 years since the original 1993 launch of the Seamaster Diver 300 meter collection, which at the time was a quartz diver and a mechanical chronograph. There was also a mid-size for our ladies. And over time, through exposure in the James Bond film series, especially in the 90s with Pierce Brosnan, this became a watch that not only achieved the long-sought design stability that had eluded the Seamaster collection, but in the 90s, it was, along with the Speedmaster, one of the two pillars that Jean-Claude Biver used to resurrect the Omega brand. Sure, the Connie was strong in Asia, and the DeVille was always the experimental collection used to launch, among other things, the coaxial, but it was the Diver 300 meter and the Speedy that really pulled Omega out of the malaise and morass of the 1980s quartz era. Also, when you consider Speedmasters and Seamasters, there had previously been a lot of flux. Oh sure, the Moonwatch was sacrosanct, but all the other Speedies were constantly redesigned, and so were the Seamaster Divers. From 1948 with the first water-resistant Seamaster through 1957 with the first Seamaster Dive Watch, every single redesign cycle was a complete redesign. It was obliteration of what came before and a full reboot. Whereas Rolex found success with its Submariner and later with its Sea Dweller by evolving the design slowly, gradually, making it evergreen and never resulting in the obsolescence of a previous model line. So the Submariner had this wonderful design stability from 1953 on continuously, whereas every 5 to 10 years we got a completely different looking Seamaster dive watch. And that changed in 1993 because this watch right here, the circa 2018 model that's currently offered, and for only $5,600 I may add, this is visibly the same watch that came out as a quartz model back in 1993. Later on, a mechanical chronometer was offered from 1996 on, and that really became the iconic core model, the 253180. That was my first luxury watch that I received as a graduation gift, and I still own it to this day. I wore it through my Navy days, so I guess that makes it a military-worn Omega Seamaster. But the fact that this is now 30 and still the same watch that it was in '93 means we're going to see some limited editions, some special models. At the very least, we're going to see dials, we're going to see case materials, straps, and bracelets. And I've got a couple of ideas. First, commemorative editions, limited runs, things that are very special, nods to the watches as they existed back in the '90s. I would also say that we might see different dials, different colors and materials. Don't rule out aventurine. Omega seems to be into aventurine and enamel these days, and either one or both could find their way into the Diver 300 meter collection this year. Also important, we might see a full ceramic 42. Now, we do have 43.5 millimeter ceramic Diver 300 meters. They started coming out in 2019. What we don't have is a standard 42 millimeter version on a bracelet, and we've seen full ceramic bracelets from other Swatch Group brands. We know that Swatch Group's industrial might means economies of scale that could make such a thing, like an Audemars Piguet type full ceramic bracelet, available at Omega prices. And I would love to see a full ceramic 42 millimeter Diver 300 meter with a bracelet to match. That would be the ultimate Diver 300 meter, even in a world where those gold skeleton dial 1998 models exist. I would be very excited to see where they go with that, especially since we could see black, gray, or white ceramic, or we could even see mixed ceramic colors. Is the world ready for a two-tone, full ceramic, full bracelet Diver 300 meter? James Bond, let me know in the chat box. Okay, what else? Well, we could see regatta timers. We could see chiming dive alarms. We could see the tourbillon finally migrate its way out of the DeVille collection because Omega is amenable to these occasional super watches, especially on special occasions. Let's not forget that onyx-dialed platinum caliber 321 Moonwatch from 2019. Omega might do something crazy with the Diver 300 meter this year, just as it did for the 50th anniversary Seamaster with the skeleton engraved precious metal diver in 1998. I would not be shocked to see such a thing made in very limited quantities for lots of money, but I think with Omega it's a real possibility, not just a distant shot. Also important to note, we could see things like chiming dive alarms. Now that Omega is openly building chiming watches, it might go the dive timer route, something along the lines of a JLC Polaris or a deep sea diving alarm, but with a much more upscale chiming mechanism now that it has that technology and probably wants to amortize it over a larger number of watches than the $500,000 price point supports. So we could see some very cool things from the Diver 300 meter this year, and I suspect that we will see special editions rather than a reboot of the whole model line. Let's see what's going on in the box. Rita Ritz saying, give me the Rolex Datejust 36 Oyster Palm dial now. That's a good one. We've got here Neo saying, if Rado can do full ceramic, Omega can, and I totally agree with that. Rado might have been first by far, but at the same time, Omega's got the price point and the volume to make it happen. We got Andre joining in from London. Andres, thank you so much for staying up late with me. We have BNS saying Omega will have a limited edition, limited to 10,000, laugh out loud. And you know what, that's probably right. But we're talking Seamasters, not Speedmasters. So maybe it'll be a little bit more exclusive. And then right here, we've got Orlando saying they should put the new hairspring on a salmon dial. And I don't disagree with that. We might see the spirate regulation system and hairspring make its debut on some sort of limited edition or even regular production Diver 300 meter this year. Eventually, it will be a regular offering. What better way to offer it than in the mainstream Speedmaster or Seamaster model? We got JJ saying, young Brando watches and style, great channel, check him out. I'll have to take a look. I haven't heard of him, but I'm more than happy to support others in the watch community online. We got a Mick in Florida saying this SMP is great in the GMT format, and it has been a while since we've seen a non-chronograph Diver 300 meter GMT. This might be the year it comes back. What else is going on here? In fact, it would be the 25th anniversary of the original Diver 300 meter GMT. We have Mick in Florida saying Rado and Omega are all swatch groups. They can do it for sure. And CLF saying, thanks Tim and Watchbox for making all your videos ad-free. Yeah, I mean, I see no reason to give any of my competitors a free ride at the beginning of my video. That's the #1 reason I took the ads off. And, you know, they're going to have to earn it the hard way. And, you know, some of those YouTube watch channels out there should probably pay me royalties for their formats, but I'm not going to get into that. All in good fun. We've got Marco D joining us from Sydney, getting up early. We've got Q Maestro, boring Rolex question. What do you think of the Rolex Datejust 116138? The only Datejust that excites me, honestly, is the chronograph. And I know a lot of people won't like that, but it's true. The chronograph is the only Datejust that really excites me. They're all good watches, but you have to be passionate about something to pay thousands of dollars for a luxury. So I would ask you, if it's your money, are you in love or are you in like? If you're in like, don't do it. Also, we've got Henry Kim joining in from California on America's left coast. And we've got Philip Lin. Do you think the IWC Big Pilot Mojave looks off with the silver crown? Yeah, I do actually. I do. That was an oversight. That was an oversight, or they couldn't justify the investment given the volume. We've got Caliber YQG saying chronographs are great. I hope the chronograph comes back. I think that would be a great 2024 type watch. This year is going to be all about the Sub and the Daytona. And then we've got Sam D saying, someone is giving us love from Tehran. Did I miss that? Is someone watching from the Middle East and staying up super like early in the morning with me? Because if that's the case, you're my hero. And then we've got Philip Lin saying, let's talk Blancpain and Breguet today. All right, Blancpain, what am I interested in? I'm interested in movements with the caliber 25 and 23. Check them out. Tourbillon Haute Horlogerie. Flying tourbillon at price points you never imagined possible. And when they're available in the 2100 series cases, you get a swimmable 80 meters of water resistance. Also, I would say the titanium Le Mans flyback in 40 millimeters is one of the most underrated haute horlogerie dress sports all-around chronographs you can buy. Definitely look for it with the rubberized strap, because that's the version that intrigues me most. There's also the Tourbillon Volant Air Sautant, a watch that came out about, I want to say that was about 4 years ago, and it was a 144-hour power reserve, enamel dial, gold or platinum, retrograde jump hour, and it had a flying tourbillon. All of those things, and immaculately handcrafted. Definitely check out the Tourbillon Volant Air Sautant. And then finally, I would say, if you're going to get a 50 fathoms, you're going to focus on one of two. One, the reference 5008, which is the 40.3 millimeter. That has the 100-hour power reserve caliber 1150. Great watch, more wearable. If you're going to get the 5015, which is the full-fat 50 fathoms, 45 millimeters, get it in either satin, rose gold with the blue dial and bezel, or satin titanium with the blue dial and the blue bezel. That one's going to give you caliber 1315, which is even tougher and a better timekeeper than the 1150, plus you get a full 120 hours of power reserve. That's what I'm recommending. Your mileage may vary. Oh, and by the way, the Blancpain tourbillon, designed by Vincent Calabrese. We got Nick Harrison joining from Edinburgh, and we've got UMQ. Thoughts on the Date 8 yellow gold with green dial? That is the one I like. The Date 8 36 yellow gold, green dial, green strap. I think those came out at Baselworld 2013. That would be my choice. Okay. We've got Amit K asking, Tim, I'm thinking about the Breguet Classique enamel sub-seconds, but is 40 millimeter too big for the dress style? No, but one, is your wrist super small? If it is, then yes, but in general, no. Two, remember, that's a very thin watch, and a thin watch is going to hide its bulk better. Definitely consider previous generation Breguet watches, like the 5130, which is a great all-around time-only ultra-thin, that is going to be a lot smaller. That one came out in the early 2000s. Definitely take a look at the 5130 if you have any doubts about the fit of a 40 millimeter on your wrist in dress style. And we've got Jim Millett saying a new Breguet Type 20 would be superb, and I second that. I would love to see them bring over some of the Blancpain chronograph technology, like caliber F385. Okay, back to Omega. Speedmasters, and a couple of vintage themed ideas here. Speedmaster 125 Tribute. It was 1973 that Omega celebrated 125 years since the beginning of the company, which was originally the General Watch Company. So not the Omega name itself, but the beginning of the company that became Omega. So this was both the first automatic winding chronometer certified chronograph and one of the very first Speedmaster limited editions. Intriguingly, it was not a moonwatch, a very impressive chronometer, automatic winding, powered by Lamagna caliber 1041. It is a highly sought collectible today, and it's the kind of thing that I could see Omega bringing back if it were to reissue its museum watch collection. This would be 175 years, so maybe we'll have a tribute to this milestone watch. I would also say, along those lines, what about a return of the museum collection? From 2001 until 10 years later, once a year, Omega came out with a watch inspired by one preserved reference from the Omega Factory Museum, and they were extraordinary. This was honestly as good or better relative to the Vacheron Historique collection, and the variety was outstanding. Reeditions of cool vintage references from Omega's past. This was the Museum Watch number 9, the Milestone 1941, a multi-scale chronograph with a triple lug built in white gold, based on a model that gained favor with officers during World War II. The actual model came out in 1938. A lovely love letter to Omega's past. This is vintage reedition done right, and I would love to see it happen this year. Along those lines, how about we bring back the near mythical Omega Synchrobeat, a certified chronometer and a deadbeat second with a crosshair dial and lugs to die for. It was made in 1952. Somewhere between 700 and 1,000 examples were made, but there was a mass recall because it didn't work well initially, and Omega didn't want to have to provide parts and service. So somewhere between 17 and maybe 3 or 4 times that number survived today with their original deadbeat second caliber 372. This is a watch that's almost impossible to find in the original example. So Omega, give us a reedition, because unlike most reeditions, which merely duplicate a watch you can buy vintage on a pre-owned market, you really can't find these. And the best way to own an example of the Synchrobeat would be to bring it back today, make it as close to the original. The original was 35. I think you could get away with making this as big as 37, 38 millimeters. Don't make it a 40, don't make it a 39, but bring it back, and bring it back as close to the original as you can, and you will have people lining up to buy a watch that was once considered to be the ultimate commercial failure. Jumping into the box, Thomas Burnett saying, the Speedmaster 125 is an interesting piece. I've been watching one on eBay for £3,500 recently, and I can guarantee you if the reedition does happen, it will be £7,000 shortly thereafter. We've got Andy Gee joining in from London, England. I always love my friends from the UK joining in. And then we've got Thomasina saying that I think that Omega is as Gerald Genta as I can stand. What else have we got to say? Plenty. How about a revived bumper automatic? I'm just saying, Omega, you've got a lot of new old stock kicking around. I would love to see that happen. Or the ultimate dark side of the moon, a thinner ceramic moon watch with a caliber 321. The alignment to the planets, Omega, please make these two things coincident. This is the watch we couldn't get enough of. We would have moon swatch levels of demand at moon watch prices, and I know you can't ignore that. Give us something elaborately themed like the Apollo 8 that you see right here, but instead of a modified moon watch caliber like we see with this 1869 here, give us the same kind of makeover of the caliber 321 with different colored bridges and textures and laser ablation and all sorts of inventive ways of reimagining this heritage chrono. I guarantee you people would absolutely dig it. There'd be no blowback, and it would be totally consistent with the Dark Side collection, making it hugely desirable and reviving the kind of waiting lists that we saw back in 2013 with the Dark Side of the Moon, 2014 with the Gray Side, and 2019 with the Apollo 8. Also on the Speedmaster front, I think there's room for a smaller ceramic moonwatch. So far, if you've wanted to get a ceramic moonwatch, you had to get the 44.25 Dark Side case. I think that it's too large for many, even though it wears pretty well. But the appeal of a 40 to 42 millimeter ceramic watch, especially a real Speedmaster Pro, would be hugely charismatic and difficult to resist. Also, generally thinner watches. Last year's redesigned Speedmaster 57 dumped its automatic movement to shed millimeters of thickness, and we saw the same thing with the 2021 Seamaster 300. This is just a good idea across the model line. Omega, you should have a corporate diktat that every redesigned watch will be thinner than its predecessor. Constellations. I think there's a lot of room to grow here. Constellations. This seems like the most likely landing spot for a tourbillon if it ever does advance beyond the DeVille collection, and I think it would be a wonderful opportunity because Omega is now dealing in aventurine. A Connie with an aventurine dial would be a great way to revisit the Stardust constellation dials of the 1970s. All right, jumping into viewer wrist shots number 3. Neil S. and his Rolex OP41 relax in Boca Raton, Florida, home of our Watchbox Boca store. Tarek H. and his IWC Pilot's Watch chronograph, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, enjoy a chocolatey beverage, possibly laced with alcohol. Owen H. combines his Alfa Romeo Giulia with the Chopard Mille Miglia chronograph. I love our watches and wheels, send them to me. Jesse R. shares a vintage Omega that was his first luxury and vintage watch in a great American legacy brand, Mercury. Bruno L. kicks back with a steel Rolex Daytona and a stogie in a quiet, relaxing moment. Guys, send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com. And instant gratification. I asked, you answered. We're going to do viewer wrist shots number 4, rapid fire, with Alex from Germany, our man from Watch Pillar. Check them out online. Created a sensational Watch Pillar display stand for his Jacques Dro. Phil C. from New Jersey reports from the Jersey Shore with his Rolex Daytona Oysterflex. Tommy J. and his Zin U50 Diver hike the mountain trails in Maui. John D. and his Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meter, the birthday boy watch, dive into work at the office. And Ed H. of Melbourne, Australia takes us home with his Alanga Unzona Cabaret at Cabaret. Send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com, and please, please, please visit me on Instagram, Tim_Mosso. Thanks to Sean. Sid is UIing on the equipment. He'll be live with us on the controller next week. And thanks to all of you who joined in. I can't wait to see what Omega has in stock for 2023. Let me know in the description below what you think is coming down the pike. Time out and Tim out. Thanks for logging on.